everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith. I'm excited today to be announcing we will be moving into chapter number 2 of the Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avalon, the pre-Kickstarter prototype. So again, just so you guys are aware, as you watch through the playthrough, rules can change, as well as the components and everything during the Kickstarter and even after, as the updates are coming in on the Kickstarter, which is still currently running today, with about 13 to 12 days or so left as of this recording. It might be even less than that by the time that this hits and lands for you guys to watch, but I want to make mention of the fact that those rules and that development is changing on the fly. So certain things are changing, and there hasn't been too many major impacts here to our playthrough, but one of the bigger ones has to do with Guardians, and we'll be talking about that at the beginning of this video very soon before we get into the playthrough. First off, huge thank you to all you guys for letting me know that you wanted to see more of chapter 2. That really did help me gauge whether the audience here at Rolling Solo wanted to see more of this particular game or whether we should stop. I did receive some individuals that said they'd no longer be watching into chapter number 2, and I completely respect that. For those individuals that will not be watching this, I have and will be creating content in parallel with this playthrough as we go through it in the next 2 weeks or so. It'll probably take us to cover the Tainted Grail chapter 2. And I'll be likely trying to release a video every 3 to 4 days or so. And if it can happen sooner, I'll do it sooner. But I wanted to let those individuals know that are skipping that I will have other content that'll be a nice surprise for them. So the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about the giveaway. In terms of the giveaway, I wanted to make mention of the fact that it's open to everyone that's watching this video. All you have to be is a subscriber of the channel, and there's a link in the description below which will take you to that giveaway if you have not signed up for it. Definitely recommend that you do, because if you jump into that giveaway, you are going to have a chance to win the Lord of Hellas core box, and as well, later on when Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avalon delivers, you'll be getting a Tainted Grail core pledge as well. So it's a two-parter prize, which is really exciting. And I want to make mention of that as I've done throughout this particular playthrough so that nobody misses out. I don't want anyone that's subscribed on the channel to come back in here too late and miss out on that. So definitely jump in on that and don't miss it. So we're going to jump into now one of the more important aspects of these playthroughs, and that is corrections that have to do with rules, as well as any tweaks that I need to make to things that I did incorrect. So we're going to talk about those specifically right now. So first up, in terms of corrections, I want to take a closer look at the full moon event card that we had at the end of the last video. And it had a sentence there that says cost of activating any Menhirs is lowered by 2 magic. Now, when we went ahead to activate the newest Menhir, we paid a magic. So technically, we are going to gain 1 magic back, which is nice. And this was caught by a number of viewers in the last video. So this is a simple fix, and I'll just be returning the magic that I paid. Now, there was another thing in regards to this card where there was some confusion, it seemed, at least in the conversations that I was seeing on the last video, and I really wanted to address this to make sure that it's crystal clear how I handled it. So basically, the second sentence in the middle there says, whenever you draw a green or gray encounter, draw a purple one instead. Now, I saw a lot of people say when you went and had your blue encounter event from moving into a settlement, it should have been a purple one. So that was incorrect, because as you can see here, it's only when drawing a green or gray that we would actually change it to a purple. But where there was even more confusion was when we went ahead and drew that gray encounter, or that blue encounter I should say, which is right here at the very bottom of it. When we went ahead and we failed it, it says draw the angry mob gray encounter. Now this is where the confusion came in, because people started saying, well, this is specifying a gray encounter, so shouldn't you be pulling a purple one? I went ahead and went with the thematic choice here. I didn't really explain it that well when I did it. I probably should have. But basically my logic was it specifically states to draw the angry mob gray encounter, as this is a result of something happening in diplomacy. If that had been a random draw, where we had to randomly draw a gray or a green encounter, then I would have grabbed something from the purple deck instead. I just thought this made a lot more sense, because otherwise what happens if you have a spirit coming up in the purple deck, so all of a sudden the angry mob got mad at you and they turned into spirits? It just kind of breaks the immersion, doesn't make much sense. And I truly do believe that the individuals creating the game were specifically targeting this angry mob encounter card and wanting us to use it, and that's why they even mentioned it specifically here. So hopefully that clears up that confusion. Now this next correction is really all on me, and it was a fantastic catch by one of the viewers from the last video, and I definitely want to correct this because it makes an impact to the gameplay, but it's a great timing to go ahead and correct this because it doesn't actually change anything from the prior video. It happened literally at the very end when we went ahead and we lit our Menhir. When we did that, we revealed a new location to the north, which is why there's one just kind of off in the distance there to the north. But what I didn't do is I didn't move my character out of the way to notice that there is a number here that says 117. That's right, there's actually supposed to be a revealed location to the right, which is surprising to me and caught me off guard after I looked at this from the comment I got in the video, because below this to the south and even above this to the north, there's nothing going off to the right. But this particular card states there is something to the right, and so that card that is going to be revealed at this point in time is called the First Farmhold. So we've got another possible location to check out going into the playthrough. So here is a up-close view of this new card that's now been attached to the side of Whiting, which is called the First Farmhold. You can see there that it's got an automatic draw of a purple encounter when we enter this location, and I cannot wait to see what happens to be hiding in this location as well. Alright, so this next correction is really truly all on me. Now this was a misinterpretation of the rulebook on my part, however the rulebook itself is not crystal clear. It does state when upgrading a character that it's the combined total between the two attributes that you have to take a look at, and then whatever point extra that you're adding into that attribute is your total XP you pay. So basically, when I went ahead and put this 1 point into empathy, I would have had at the time just 2 in aggression. So the way the rulebook states it is it makes you think that essentially you're going to be looking at the total of these 2 spots, and then if you're putting your 3rd point into an attribute, it's going to cost you 3 XP. What it misses to add in there, which I think is very important and will be corrected, I'm sure, for the final production, is the fact that the ability cards do in fact count as 1 additional point. So now there is a limit to that. At a certain point, 4 is the highest currently in the prototype that you can hit. Every subsequent point after 4 is always going to be 4 XP for any upgrades. So that's another thing to remember, is that yes, I could continue going after some more of these aggression type ability cards until of course I run out of them. But technically, once I hit 4 XP for a cost, I'll never go above that, regardless of how many ability cards I keep tagging onto the side of this thing. So what I have to do is reverse this, because I truly don't have the XP in order to get 1 point of empathy, because 1 point of empathy right now, based on the rules that I should have been playing by, would have been 2 points plus a 3rd point, and if I want a 4th point, which would be here, it's going to cost me 4 XP, and I've only got 3 XP. So I can't get 1 point of empathy. So I had to basically reverse that. The good thing is it happened at the end of the last video, so there's no harm, no foul there. So we're going to correct it, and instead I'm just going to put it in spirituality, because in spirituality it's connected to practicality, which has 2, but there's no ability card beside it. And it can help me in diplomacy by opening up some diplomacy cards to use if we run into those situations, which we obviously know our character is not so good at. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to spend the 3 XP, and it truly is 3 this time, and we're going to be putting 1 point into the special spirituality attribute, and now that has been corrected. One of the major changes that happened during one of the updates of the Tainted Grail on the Kickstarter, which is showing changes to the rules as the Kickstarter goes along, is that cards that have this G up here in the top left-hand corner that are stated as Guardians, those particular cards, when playing true solo, will not appear in the land on the location cards if you fail or flee this particular encounter. So in the past, basically, if you didn't, based on the prototype rules I have, if you had a fled or you failed to actually kill this particular monster, it would then go onto the game board and would basically be prowling around. You'd be rolling this die here, this navigational die, to determine where it goes during the particular phase associated to it. But that has changed, and I definitely recommend that you go check out the Kickstarter page for the information on that. It's in one of the updates made most recently, and it does specify that for true solo, so when playing with 1 character at your control, then you will not have to worry about the Guardians roaming all over the land. But if you're playing with more than 1 player, then you will be. All right, guys, we are ready to begin the first day inside of chapter number 2. Now, just before we go ahead and read the chapter 2 start event card, I want to go ahead and do our new day begins phase, which is going to deal with our turning of the dials. We're going to end up losing a Menhir off of the land, which is going to affect the land itself. So I want to show you guys how that works. I talked about it a little bit in a couple comments with some people in the last video, but now you'll be able to actually see a visual representation of how a Menhir going out actually affects the game itself. And then we're going to move into during the day, and at the very beginning of the during the day phase, we'll read the chapter 2 start event card to figure out what are we supposed to do moving into this next chapter. So let's get to it. So here's where things get a little crazy. So first off, you'll notice that I flipped this card. We'll talk about that in a second because that has to do with this Menhir and its dial. We'll deal with that in a second. First off, we're going to deal with the one that has dialed down to 0. So as of right now, it's at 1. At this point in time, and the new day begins phase, we're supposed to turn all the dials down. So we'll be turning this Menhir down by 1. So whenever a Menhir goes out, in other words, the dial reaches 0, of course, we're going to remove the Menhir from the land of Avalon. Sadly, it is gone. The dial also comes off the board. And then on top of that, we're going to remove any location cards that are no longer in range of any active Menhirs. So basically they're more than one slot away, whether they're diagonal or in a straight line from the newest Menhir or any other active Menhir if you have multiple. So basically the theme behind this in terms of the narrative is that the parts of the land are sinking into a primal force of the weirdness, except for a small isolated pockets of reality left around disabled Menhirs or powerful relics. So basically the land that no longer has a Menhir lit is going to sink back into darkness, which is pretty awesome. Again, it keeps the game board kind of controlled in a way as well, so it doesn't get out of hand and massive, which I really like. So it keeps that fog of war continuing, because as you progress further in, what's going on behind you or what you previously explored disappears. Now the downside of that is things that are very handy, like the island asylum right now, because we're super beat up after our last encounter, is going to disappear. So we're going to lose everything that's not in range of this Menhir. So basically we can keep the Hunter's Grove, we can keep our old farmhold where we started, which is our home location, so that's a plus. We have the Charred Conclave still, and we also get to keep, of course, the first farmhold and Tanglewood up here. Or let me see, sorry, Tangle Root up there. But the ones on the outside here, all the way along, every one of these is disappearing. So we have now lost the 4 dweller mounds, meaning we will never know what's there unless, of course, we explore off into this direction, hope to find a Menhir, which would then re-enable that thing to show up there. So it's very cool that way, and sad. We also lose Warrior Fair, so this card will come into play as well. Grubwood, we never got a chance to visit this one, so this will disappear. Forlorn Swords, actually, just so you guys are aware, just from my first playthrough, this is again showing the replayability in the game, we never even saw these 3 locations. We never visited them, and we never got to actually explore them in any big way. So there's a whole bunch of narrative there that we're not going to see. Now, we might still see some of them if we can get a Menhir lit close to them, but again, it's showing you that it's almost impossible, if impossible, to completely scour the land of everything in the one playthrough. So this is again just showing that. The Forlorn Swords is going to disappear. We did actually go there, so we know what that one's about, but we didn't do every option narratively either, so remember that. Island Asylum, we did a couple things here. The sad part about this is we've now lost one of our major areas for healing, which would have been really nice to have, and as you can see, the land has drastically changed. So you might be wondering, why did you flip over this particular location? We're not exploring it. Good question. But I wanted to show you guys something that affects the dial as of right now. So the dials have all been turned down by 1 in the game. So our 7 here is going to go down to 6. But one thing that was noted in the last video, which was a great catch by our viewers, is right down here you can see when we're activating this Menhir, the very last thing it says is, and set its dial to 7 -1 per player. I'm playing with 1 player, so we have to actually start it at 6, meaning after we turn the dials down, it's down to 5. That's right. So we don't have as many days going into the second chapter as we did starting out in the first. So just before we move into the gameplay itself, or the during the day phase, I wanted to give you a quick overview of the game board here for our characters so you can actually remember where we're currently at starting this brand new day. So we have 1 food, which is not very much, but enough to get us through the first day. We'll have to look for some more food. 2 wealth, 2 reputation, 1 magic. We gained that 1 magic back, thankfully, because of the particular full moon card that we had in the last video. We gained that magic back because we spent it for Menhir when we shouldn't have. So that's great. We got a magic back, which you can use during diplomacy or combat to link cards together in a sequence. We are also very, very, very low on health, which is not good, which is capping our energy going into this day. We had to change from empathy to spirituality because we didn't have the experience to actually get empathy. And you'll also note here that due to the fact we also got our 3rd point in a combined set of attributes, that the next one we go after is going to be even more expensive. And if we go ahead, say for instance, in upper practicality, that would be the 3rd point in practicality. It would cost us 4, and at that point in time, we could even get an ability card. But in this particular situation, I thought I wanted to rush to get my diplomacy up, so I spent the 3 so that we're more prepared because we're already hurting quite a bit. One thing I want to mention about terror, guys, is right now you'll notice our terror is at the cap limit. You might be wondering, well, how does that work? Obviously, you're going to go insane if you get to the red here, which is bad, and has its own "you're going insane" card, which attaches to your character board. Just like if you were dying, you get the "you are dying" card if your health goes all the way to the bottom. But the one thing I want to mention that's really interesting from a gameplay standpoint is if my terror ever goes above my health limit, in other words, if this cube right here was to go up during gameplay for whatever reason to 1 even, what that basically would do to me is going into any combat or diplomacy, I am basically just terrified. And I draw 1 less card when drawing my initial hand. That's right. So you're really in trouble because you're actually capping how much you can start out with right from the get-go. So it just adds, an even worse situation to a bad situation, if that makes sense. So anyway, it's just not something we want to have happen. So we're going to try our best to basically avoid having any type of fear come into us, and it's going to actually push up our terror. So let's go ahead and start off the very first day. I know there was a lot we had to cover there, but there was a lot of rule changes and some tweaks we needed to make, so hopefully everything's squared away. Don't worry, guys, I've got tags down below in my pinned comments, so those of you that want to jump right to the gameplay are going to start it out right here. Otherwise, thank you for listening to all of those corrections and adjustments, and now let's dig into chapter number 2. So we're going to start off chapter number 2, of course, by looking at the event card. And this is actually going to give you guys some nice information as to how that event deck is built. And this is again going to show some replayability here as well, as you'll see that there is a specific order in which you build these chapter decks. You'll notice that there are like End, Part 4, Part 3, Part 2, and 1 that are placed at specific parts throughout the event deck. However, based on the number of players as well as the number of random events, it's going to change the ongoing effects of the land as you go through that particular chapter. So the major story points are going to stay the same, but there's going to be things that are going to be interjected or changed throughout your playthrough of the Tainted Grail. And this is what I really like, because yes, there is an overarching narrative to the whole story, but if I play this through a second time, those 6 random events that you're seeing right there, or the other 4 random events that you're adding in there, are really going to change how the gameplay is going to actually pan out and what decisions you're going to make. So this is the card which helps you build that event deck. So now we're going to move into chapter 2 part 1 to find out the beginning story of this new chapter. All right, here we go. Chapter 2 part 1 event. Let's find out what we've got here. This is going to give us our overarching story for chapter number 2. So Act 1, Chapter 2, Part 1, Roads of Avalon. The Avalon opens up before you with its many dangerous trails. Should you go after the first expedition, or find help in Camelot, or maybe there's some other way you've yet to discover? This is going to be a card placed in the top of the ongoing events pile, and it looks like there's 3 different things we can go after. So the first one says, New Tasks. Explore to the Camelot location. That's one location we can try to find, so that's a pretty clear objective. That's probably the most obvious one so far. We've only read one anyway. Gain the Tainted Grail secret card. Okay, so we don't know how to actually get that card, but we know what card we're looking for, so Okay, doable, potentially. And then the last one is gain the fate of the expedition status. And statuses come from that save sheet, or at least they're captured there. They don't come from there. They come from actually narrative within the game, usually when exploring. And it says you need to get parts 3, 4, and 5, and then when completed, draw and resolve the bottom event card. So basically, we're going after one of these 3 things. So very, very interesting. Now, you'll also notice on the save sheet here, the fate of the expedition actually has parts 1 all the way through 8. So if you head in that direction, my understanding would be you potentially could be taking on a narrative adventure or story arc that's much different than the other 2, potentially, that maybe carries into other chapters. So that's really cool. And you can see right now where the replayability comes in, because yes, you're looking to succeed at one of these 3, but basically these are all ors. You can do one or the other, and they're all going to have different effects on the gameplay. So very, very cool. We'll have to see how this all unfolds as we discover more in the land of Avalon. All right, so I want to start off the day with a little discussion on our energy and how we can use exhaustion for our benefit right now, because currently we start our day at 2 health, which gives us 3 total energy to spend, but we can truly only spend 1 and be safe about it, and then we'd be able to not become exhausted. But in this particular case, where we have such a limited amount of energy, it's actually worth it to become exhausted, because 4 is the highest that we can actually replenish ourselves on the energy track if we are exhausted. So it's perfect timing to exhaust ourselves, because when we heal 1 at the end of the day by eating food, it'll bump our health to 3, which gives us a total of 4 energy. So either way, we're going back to 4. So it makes sense to just exert ourselves and utilize this turn 3 points of energy. And that'll give us something to do during the day, even though we're very, very wounded at 2 health. We really don't want to encounter anything that's going to be too nasty. So this is very much a gamble right now. We lost the island, which would have helped us to heal. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to spend my first point of energy on the track, dropping me down to 2. We are still not exhausted just yet, but we will be on the next spend. We're going to move our hero from Whiting all the way up to Tanglewood, and as soon as we enter into Tanglewood, it says draw an green encounter. But before we do that, we take a look at all the numerical keys around the outside. We're going to populate them. The one thing that's interesting about Tangleroot, and I think I might have called it Tanglewood, but it's Tangleroot, is that you'll see the number at the top here is very faded, whereas this one is very strong. So my guess is there could be a story element as to why or why not we're supposed to reveal this location. So I'm going to double check 134 to ensure that this is supposed to be revealed when I walk into it, or maybe this has something to do with exploring the location that then allows you to go to 134. So that's interesting. But for now, we can safely reveal 113 to the west. So let's do that. So off to the west, we have Mirror Lake. Check that out. That's pretty cool. Now, one thing you guys might want to take interest or note of is the fact that there is a location action here, which is absolutely amazing for what we need for our hero. Let's zoom in and take a closer look at it. Wow, there seriously could not have been a better location revealed during this day than this location. This is incredible. You can see here, if we choose to rest by the lake as a location action, which we can do once per day, we're not only going to gain an energy, we're also going to gain a health, and we're going to reduce our terror. And 2 of those things we definitely want to do, which is increasing our energy and also going ahead and gaining a health. So just by moving there, remember location actions are free, we're going to gain an energy back plus a health. It's incredible. This is going to really help us out going into the next day. I guess the only interesting fact is that if we move there, we run into a situation where I become exhausted, and then my health will go up to the next level. So my cap for energy would be 4, and then technically when I eat, it would be, my cap would end up being 5 for my energy. But because I'm exhausted this day, on the next day, the highest we could get back would actually be 4. So there is a little bit of a downside. 4 would be the highest we could go, but we get our health up higher, and then we can even go ahead the next day, maybe at the start of it, and do this same location action again, take advantage of it twice in a row, if that makes sense. So I think this is something we really need to do, because we lost that island earlier in the game, to ensure that we don't take too much more damage. But we have other things to worry about, including a green encounter in Tangleroot that we have to deal with now. So let's jump back to that card, and we'll also talk quickly about 134. All right, so we're going to take a close look here at Tangleroot, but the first thing I want to mention is 134. At the very top of the card here, you'll notice is 134 grayed out. You might be wondering what that is. As I mentioned it earlier, what that is basically a location card that's not included as part of the prototype. So again, I'm using a pre-Kickstarter prototype, and not all avenues during the prototype are available to me during Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, so there will be things I can't even do until the game is finally produced. So when the game finally is produced, if you happen to pick it up, you'll be able to explore down that particular avenue. Things will open up for you. So not all avenues are open up in this particular chapter, as this is supposed to be a prototype. So that makes sense. The one thing I want to mention here is we do have to resolve that green encounter, but I also want to read the flavor text at the bottom of the card. It says, for many years, travelers worked to turn this overgrown gorge into a trial. Despite their efforts, it is still a confusing maze. Let's go ahead and draw a green encounter to find out what we've stumbled across in Tangleroot. So while traversing the area of Tanglewood, we happen to find a flock of puffins, or at least these flock of puffins have been tracking us potentially. These things are nothing like their name sounds. Their name makes it sound like they're extremely nice, something you'd want to stop and admire. No, you do not want to admire these things. As you can see from the flavor text, it says their beaks are so colorful, likely from the blood, that people often forget their main function is to break apart bones in search of marrow. That's not good. And what's really nasty about this particular encounter is your armor and shield items have literally no effect, meaning that the effects that you get from them typically during combat, they're useless. And that's really bad for me because I have improvised armor, which would have reduced some damage. Does nothing in this case because this flock of puffins knows exactly where to hit me in order to find meat, I guess, which is pretty brutal, on me in order to wound me. So regardless of how much armor I have on, it will find skin, and that's just nasty. So here's what's even worse about this. We usually have the option to flee or to fight. Here's the brutal thing. This thing has an attack out of the gate at 2 wounds. And if we go ahead and decide to flee, we have to take an attack. If I have no armor to block, 2 wounds literally kills my character and ends this playthrough right now. It would be the quickest start to a Chapter 2 and the fastest death you have ever seen. But the only option we have in this situation is to fight for our lives, because if we choose to run, this thing finds a weakness on us, it exploits it, it eats it, and we die. So there is no positive here besides trying to fight it. So we have to fight it and hope that we can get in our first run either some defense in order to stop wounds from hitting us, because cards can help us potentially defend, or we can get 4+ on our damage to ensure that it only hits us for 1 damage. That would be the only way we can continue this fight. Otherwise, bad things are going to happen. We don't have a choice. This flock of birds is on us, and we've got to fight. All right, so we're going to begin our combat, and we're going to be starting off by using the old steel smasher, as we always do, which will give us +1 value to our sequence, which is going to help us get above that, or hopefully get to that 4+ that we need in order to only take 1 hit to keep us from dying, which is huge. The other thing we'll bring into battle as well is our battle horn, which again, if we end up with a courage on the end of our sequence, we get to gain an additional card. And as of right now, we don't have any penalties, thank goodness, because we don't have any fear or terror that's above our health limit. Otherwise, that would reduce the amount of cards or combat cards we can start this hand with. So we're going to go into this with 3 cards drawn. So let's find out what those 3 are. The first one is Discover Weakness. That sounds like a really good card. It says uncounterable and skip your next turn. The enemy will attack twice. All cards in sequence after this one have +1 value. That actually sounds like a terrible card to get right now because of many different reasons. I don't want to skip my next turn. That is not something, and the reason it's such a good card and a bad card in this situation, mostly bad, is because it opens up a number of different vulnerabilities along the sequence, so it starts to get me into other things. The only thing is, I don't need especially magic or practicality to open up that much. I really want to focus on just aggression, courage. So this card actually hurts me more than it helps me. The next one we have here is called Gather Strength. This one is uncounterable, so they can't counter it. It says drop if the enemy deals 2 or more. Again, a card that does absolutely nothing for me in this particular round, so I'm looking at a mulligan so far. The last one here is Heroic Strike. Okay, so this one would expend an energy from us. If played when the enemy value is higher than the number of cards in your sequence. Mark this card and raise its value by 1. Guys, we might have found a winner to progress a little further, because this would mean that this is a 3 plus my hammer's 4. And if this is the only card that I play in the sequence, it's actually not bad. We could go in, we'd take 1 hit from the birds, but we'd at least get to the second round, hoping to gather enough strength, hopefully 3, to take this thing down. So this is the gamble. Do I go ahead with the heroic strike? It's heroic strike, so it kind of sounds like I should. And then hope that my second draw is good. The positive too is if I do this, I get an additional card because I end with courage. I think this is looking pretty good. So we are definitely going to go with that strategy. So we're going to go ahead. I mean, yes, we have to pay an energy to make it work, but still, I think this is a good thing to do. So I'm going to go ahead, drop my energy down. We are into the exhausted area where we only have 1 more energy to spend now. But this heroic strike is a 2. And it says, if played when the enemy value is higher than the number of cards in your sequence, which it is, it's 7 versus 1 in the sequence, then mark this card and raise its value by 1. So I'm going to go ahead here. We're just going to take we'll take one of the coin tokens to mark this thing that it's actually going to give us an extra 1. I'll do that by just putting the grail side up so we know that it's a total of 3, plus my hammer is 4, so now we will only take 1 wound going into the enemy's turn. And I'm actually going to stop right there, and the only card I'm going to carry over into the next round, I think, will be... neither of these are really that great, to be honest. This is actually tough. I may not even want any of them, but I think I'll keep Gather Strength. I don't think there's any reason to keep Discover Weakness, so I will carry that card over. And now we're going to go ahead and activate the combat table of the flock of puffins, which are coming in hot and heavy, looking for some flesh, and they have done it. So 4+ is going to have them go ahead, and they're going to actually chew into my flesh, which is terrible, hitting me for 1 damage, which at this point in time is going to knock me down to 1 health remaining, which is super, super low. A little scary. Okay, so now what's going to happen is it's going to counter my 3rd card. Well, good thing I don't have a 3rd card. This is my 1st card, so it gets to stay out there, which is awesome. And now we get to start another round. And as I mentioned before, we ended with a courage, so we're going to go ahead and get to draw an additional card. So we're going into this next round with 4 cards, and I'm really hoping for 3 damage. Literally, if I don't get it, my character's dead. Like we really are on the line here. So here we go. First card off the top is an Intimidate. So this card is 1 going into it. At least it links and opens up a number of different things. This is actually a fantastic card to get right now, because that is going to open up a lot of good things for us. It has a preparation that will give me extra value of fighting a gray encounter. That's not going to help me, but hey, 1 is better than nothing and opens up options. Great card pull there. We also have Feint. This one is uncounterable. If the enemy tries to counter this card, mark it. Its value becomes 2 for the rest of the encounter. Pretty cool. So that basically bumps up your value of your card. So that's not bad either. Defend. So that's always good if we want to kind of extend this whole fight further, as you've seen from prior battles. And then Feint again. So we have 4 cards. Now I could mulligan this in order to try something and hope to get more. But as of right now, I think I'll just take a look at these 4 cards closely and see if I can put something together. All right, so I'm choosing not to mulligan here. I think I've got something that could potentially work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play Intimidate. We're going to intimidate this this group of puffins, this flock, by connecting our courage together in order to get ready for hopefully a battle that will last. We're going to put our preparation token there, which would be good if we're playing against a gray encounter, but we're not. This basically delays and will trigger and open up for the next round, but it won't give me a value of +2 because we're not fighting a gray encounter anyway, but I'm just going through the motions of following the mechanisms of a sequence, so you guys can follow that. But I do gain +1 in my value, so as of right now I have a total of 5, which is good. We're getting closer to 7, which is what we need to take this thing down. The next thing I'm going to do to save myself from imminent death is play the Defend card. If I hadn't got this card on the draw, I would have died. And this card is going to allow me to end my turn right now with a courage symbol on the far end, which will give me 4 card draw on the next turn. Plus, it stops any damage from getting through, which is perfect because I only have 1 health remaining. And we now move into the end of this round for me, and I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to keep one of these cards for myself. I think at this point in time, keeping one of the feints makes sense, because if I strategically place this in the third spot of my sequence, which currently defend is at, we know that the last thing that this flock of puffins is going to do every time is counter the third. And so that would turn the feint from a 0 to a 2, and that could come in handy as a last-ditch effort to try to take these things out. So that's the card I'm keeping. I'm ditching Discover Weakness. I don't want it anymore. And we are now going to move to the combat table. Now the flock of puffins is going to activate. We know from this particular card that they're going to do 1 damage, but my defend blocks it. They're now going to counter the third card, which happens to be the defend card. So boom, the defend card now comes off the sequence. It did its job though to block the damage. So that was huge. And now we're going to come back around to me. So we're going to draw another 4 cards because I have a Courage sitting open thanks to my Battle Horn, which I am definitely blowing full blower right now, being that I'm almost dead. So we're moving into, oh my goodness, I got myself Final Blow as one of the cards. So drop after the enemy attack, if not last in the sequence. This gives me 2. That would actually kill them right there. So I think we can do it now, guys. I think we've got it in the bag. That was the card we needed. That literally is perfect. So we are going to survive this. We got the Outsmart card as well, which just gives more options. I think the Final Blow is really all we need. The rest of them don't really matter at this point. We even got Bloodthirsty Rage in there as well. We know what we need to do here. We're going to put that Final Blow into play because that plus symbol allows us to use 1 or 2. We're linking all over the place here, so we're perfectly fine. It's going to give us 2. That's going to up our total now. And of course, just so you guys know, this would normally come off, and this card would go up in value by 2, so it would be a 3 if we were fighting a gray encounter, but we are not. So basically we have 2 with the Heroic Strike, 1 here, 1 on the hammer is 4, the Grail counts for 5, and then 6, 7 on the Final Blow. Boom, we have taken down the flock of puffins with a single point of health remaining. Ridiculous. Now we're going to go ahead and gain the loot from killing this flock. All right, now that was an absolutely insane battle, and I wasn't actually sure whether we were going to make that or not, because that could have killed us. And if it had have, this would have been a really short playthrough. But the good news is he can see Mirror Lake in the distance. He's just hanging on by a thread. And if he can just get to the lake, he can recover himself enough to keep going. And it's just so crazy thematic how this is panning out. I absolutely love it. So right now, the flock of puffins we have taken down. Again, we didn't use any armor, shields, as it mentioned on the card. It has here at the very bottom, you're going to gain 2 experience, so we'll put 2 experience right there. And we're going to gain 2 food, which is awesome because now our food is replenished, which is going to give us 3 days worth of food, including tonight when we really need to eat and heal up. So this is awesome. You'll notice that our health is 1 tick away from going into the dying zone, which is right here in the center. As soon as this T marker goes into the 0, we are considered dying, and at that point this card attaches and we flip it over, find out the nastiness that happens, but we are going to do everything in our power to stop that. And on top of this, you'll notice the terror track is actually capped out. So as of right now, because it is so low, this is the kind of brutal thing about this. You can see here that this actually should have been, there should have been a terror cube in this spot. And this is a correction that I want to make. It didn't actually impact the gameplay at all, because how it would have worked if I had have actually correctly drew cards on that last round when I had after I took a damage, what would have happened is my terror has been at 0 forever. So what should have happened was instead of pulling 4, I pull 1 less. So I should have pulled 3, but we do know that the Final Blow card that I got and used was the first card that I pulled off the deck. So I believe what ended up happening was during my demonstration earlier about terror, I took that cube out and forgot about it. But I want to make mention again so that everyone remembers, if your health meter is underneath your terror, so in this case, I've literally gone so low that I'm actually underneath 0, you draw 1 less card. So the first round we were fine because we had 2 health, so I was okay to be at 0. So I pulled all my cards as normal. The second round I took the damage, or actually I should say at the end of the first round I took the damage. Into the second round I would have only been able to draw one. I would have been drawing one less card, and thanks to my horn that gave me 3, but we know again, as I mentioned, the first card is what saved us, so no change to the gameplay even though I goofed that up. But I wanted to make that correction so that it's crystal clear that it is a real bad thing to have my character this beat up. But we've gone ahead, gained our experience, gained our loot, and you can see we have one more point of energy to spend, so let's go ahead and get ourselves to rest by the lake and at the end of the day at Mirror Lake and get ourselves healed up as much as we can. So with our last point of energy, we move our hero from the Tangle Route, where he almost died completely of loss of energy, life, and everything else in between, and he lands on the Mirror Lake shoreline, where he decides to rest at the lake. And you can see that location actions, as mentioned on the reference cards, are free. So he's going to go ahead right now. He's going to actually gain back an energy, which is going to give him an additional energy to spend, meaning we can actually explore at the lake too. We're now going to also gain a health back, which is going to put our health above that terror limit we just talked about. So now we're not going to be pulling one less card at the start of every combat, which is huge because that would really, really be detrimental to us. And we're also going to remove any terror, but we don't have any. So we're done. It says here on the flavor text, but just before we do that, we should check the numerical keys, and you'll see 133 is at the very top of the lake. So as our character moves into this particular Mirror Lake, he sees in the distance another location to explore. But because we were playing the prototype, you can see here that the card is filled in black. So what he thought was something was just a bunch of shadows and darkness in the distance. He couldn't see anything. You might be wondering, that seems really weird, but in the prototype, we can't see into this direction or move into this direction, but in the final game, you will be able to. So this is something that has been blocked off for the prototype. It says Road to Moonring. It says this area is unavailable in our demonstration. Be sure to visit their website to take part in the upcoming Kickstarter campaign and help us bring the full game to life. So we won't be able to explore any further, but we didn't have to spend an action at all ever to reveal locations around us. We just know we can't move in that direction for this particular playthrough. Now we do have one energy left to spend, and I think we need to do a little bit of exploring around Mirror Lake. So using the 1 point of energy that we got back by resting at the lake, we're going to go ahead and we're going to explore this lake and see what's here. Literally just exhausting ourselves to the maximum. It says Mirror Lake. Now that does not look good, whatever's going on in the middle of that lake. It says the sky and the reflective surface of this still highland lake merge into one before your eyes. A feeling of serenity washes over you. You feel tempted to lie down on the sandy bank and stay there until the end of the world. But then stories of the alien being living in these depths reverberate in the back of your mind, bringing you back to Earth. If you have the Grail Finder status, we're supposed to go to verse 9. Otherwise, we're going to the journal. And we will be going to the journal because we do not have the Grail Finder status. This is our list of current statuses. We have Tracker, Scrounger, Robed Wickerman or Robbed Wickerman, and Riddle of the Old Steel, just as a reminder of the statuses that we have. Let's head to the journal and find out what happens at Mirror Lake. So at Mirror Lake, our options are to summon the lady, but why would she listen to you? Go to verse 1. So that doesn't sound very good. Swim to the island on the lake. Go to verse 2. Interesting. Hunt, judging from the tracks in the sand, many animals come here to drink. Go to verse 6. I don't think we need to hunt because we were so successful, barely successful by attacking that flock of puffins. We got enough food for now, so we'll skip that one. Or we can leave and the exploration ends. Well, it doesn't sound like summoning the lady is a good idea because we don't have the right status, and I'm guessing that that would result in a really bad situation, and with 1 health, probably not what we want. Actually, sorry, we have 2 health now, so we could probably handle a little bit of a hit, but let's not tempt that too much. Let's go ahead and swim to the island. Now, this could be just as dangerous, to be honest, but we're going to try to swim to the island on the lake by going to verse number 2, so wish me luck. The swim is much longer than you expected. Fantastic. To make matters worse, that's never a good thing to start a sentence, something from below starts to brush by your legs and your body as you make your way towards the island. Your heart begins to race. You go as fast as you can, your lungs almost bursting. Finally, you climb yourself onto shore exhausted. Well, I am exhausted, so I guess I'm doubly exhausted now. This is not an ordinary island. It seems to be made of the same bone-like matter the four dwellers made their wall from. While you rest, preparing to depart, you feel strange energies flowing through your body. This says lose 1 energy. Well, I don't have any energy left to lose, so I guess that's a good thing. I gain a terror. That's bad. So that, the brushing under the water against my legs, obviously up to my terror. That's really bad because now I'm actually above my health limit, which means I'll be drawing 1 less card during combats and in diplomacy, things like that. So that's not good. But I do gain a magic. So that's not terrible. I guess magic is hard to come by, so that's not bad. Now we have 2 magic, and our exploration ends. So we didn't actually get anything too major to that. Probably hurt us more than helped us, but at least we now know what happens when we travel to that particular island. And with that, that is going to end this particular day. So after one of the toughest days in literally the entire journey since he first left the farmhold way back at the beginning of chapter 1, literally the worst day he's ever had, he finds himself on an island ready to just pass out from straight exhaustion. So he's sitting there at the mirrored lake, but technically on this weird island full of magic, mystery, and a creepy entity under the lake, completely exhausted and ready to end the day. So the first thing we're going to do as normal is consume 1 food. So let's go to the player board. We'll see how things change. My poor hero has had probably one of the roughest days of his entire life. He's really hurting, and he's going to go ahead now. He's going to eat 1 food. Thank goodness this will actually provide him some good things. So first off, we restore 1 health, which will get us actually back up and above over the terror limit, which is good, so that we do no longer will be reducing our hand size when going into combat and diplomacy. And the even cooler thing is we get to actually reduce our fear for the first time, I think, in the entire game. Maybe we did this once before, but our fear now drops back down to 0. So that encounter at the island was actually worth it. And at this particular point in time now, we're going to go ahead and restore our energy. If we're not exhausted, we would go all the way to full or +1 because of my ability card that I have on my character, which would normally be attached up here for aggression. But I do not get that because I exhausted myself. So the highest I can go is 4. And look at that. I just happen to be healed to the exact right spot to make the most of this heal. So I get all the way back to 4. So we're slowly getting back into the game again. I don't know how this panned out. Now at this point we can spend some XP. So we have 2 XP, which really isn't that much. And honestly, what I've been really kind of gunning for, now that we've opened up spirituality and we already had caution at the start of the game, it would be nice to get a point in empathy, but we're going to need to save 4 XP to get that. And that's a lot. Could take a while to get there. We would gain, by spending 4 XP, another ability card in aggression if we chose to put it in aggression, or if we chose to put it in empathy and we spend... or actually, once we get into empathy, in order to get that ability card, we need to fill up the 2 spots here, plus get the put the 3rd one on. So it'll take a while to get an ability card in empathy. But aggression, we could potentially get another one. But you know what? Now that I think about it, it might make more sense to spend our XP potentially on cards. It might be a good idea to spend it on cards. And just because we're so close to death, it might be worthwhile taking a look through those combat cards again to see if we can pull some other combat cards in that are stronger than the ones we have to hopefully help us during fighting, because we want to avoid having situations where we're going to take any more damage. And that's something that, as of right now, seems to be a real big focus for me to stay alive. So let's go ahead and take a look at the advanced combat cards and see if there's anything there worth talking about. So from the pile of advanced combat cards that come in the prototype, we have a number of ones that I haven't really gone over before. It might be cool to show you guys some of these ones up close and personal. So we have Attack, which is an improved attack upon the attack card that's actually in the game. And it looks like it actually allows you to draw extra cards, which could be super handy. Plus it does 2 damage. And it only costs 1 XP. That could be a really good one to put in there. So that's really good. This one here, Shattering Strike. This one costs 2. Gives a super powerful 4 value combat. That's crazy high. Again, it's tougher to get that particular 2 key to work out for the aggression, but it can happen. We also have Powerful Attack here. This says Receive a Wound. We don't want to put cards in our hand that are going to give us any more wounds at this point in time, so probably not the best. We'll knock that one out of contention for now. We have Intimidate, the improved version of Intimidate, which says, again, it's going to help us during gray encounters. Not really something we need right now. I need it to be better. Well, actually, gray's not bad. Gray's, I don't know. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not too sure whether or not that's a good thing or not. No, I still kind of like the attack card better, but we might pull that one back. We'll see. We have powerful attack here. It says receive another wound for this one. I don't want to put that in my deck either, because again, I want to avoid that. Another attack improved, so we could put 2 of those in for 2. That actually wouldn't be bad. And then 1 for Invigorating Rage and 1 for, which is 3, that's powerful. And then Bloodthirsty Rage. You know what? I think I'm going to go with the attack ones. I want to have higher odds of pulling the good cards. So let's go ahead and we're going to spend 2 XP to go ahead and we're going to grab the 2 attack cards that are inside of our attack deck. We're going to switch them out with these 2 improved versions, and I'll show you the difference between them right now. So now let's take a look at the advantages of going ahead and picking these 2 improved versions of attack versus the old one. So again, our deck of combat cards is 25. If we add 2 cards in, we have to take 2 cards out. They can be any cards we want, but I'm choosing to go ahead and get rid of the attack ones because it just makes them better. And the best improvement of this card, besides the extra keys to connect them with, as you can see now, we now have Courage, and we also have an easier connection on the far end here with these improved versions. We also get a +1 on the value, but the coolest advantage is that playing this card no longer ends our turn, which allows us to actually build out a sequence and not have those pesky cards in our hand that are constantly going to stop us from progressing through a very big chain of attacks in one combat round, which would have been super handy when fighting that flock of puffins, because cards like the regular attack card here can really mess with you if you want to get your value up, but at the same time they keep stopping your ability to put more cards afterwards until the next round. So this is huge. We're going to take these 2 attack cards and turf them, making our combat deck even better by placing 2 of these cards inside of it, removing the chances that we'll pull cards that are going to give us little value as well as a stoppage in our sequence. All right, so we're going to spend our XP that we have, so 2 XP is gone in order to upgrade our combat deck. Completely worth it, in my opinion. Hopefully you guys agree that that's a good choice. And now we're going to move into the Dream. And you can see at Mirror Lake that the icon was there, which is the eye symbol. And now we're going to go ahead and read a dream from the journal. As we sleep by the shore, you see 4 wanderers still shaken by the loss of their companion, who enter the misty expanses of Tuthan. They wander between its ever-shifting streets and impossible structures. They find something that has been hidden away for a long time. All 4 of them barely leave with their lives, but now a 5th one follows. A new day begins. So first off, we're going to turn all the dials down. So whiting here, our Menhir is going to drop down to 4. So we've ticked that down successfully. That's the only dial inside of the game currently. And now we're going to go ahead and reveal the new event card for the day. Chapter 2, Part 2, event card. Let's see what we have for this particular day. Act 1, Chapter 2, Part 2, Nowhere to Go. Many people of Connacht, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I'm going to go with it, no longer believe their farmhold can survive. They set out with their meager possessions, looking for a safer place. But even a disabled Menhir offers some protection in its vicinity, allowing pockets of civilization to temporarily survive in the weirdness. Unfortunately, traveling between such places is impossible for any mortal. Hint, do not let the weirdness surround you. Always check the nearby Menhirs in advance and have a plan ready to enable them when necessary. A new day begins. We awaken to a much better and hopeful day than the prior one. The prior one was filled with all kinds of nastiness that almost had us die. We almost lost our lives against the puffins inside of Tanglewood, and we now awaken in Mirror Lake on an island, ready to set foot out and adventure on. And the first thing we want to do is take advantage of that action at the location for free, which allows us to have another rest by the lake. And we're absolutely going to do so in order to help ourselves for the start of this brand new day. So resting at the lake here is going to have us actually increase our energy, but as you can see, our cap for energy is actually going to prevent us from gaining that. The next thing we do is up our health, so sadly that happened in the wrong order for us, but there's nothing we can really do about that. The only way we could have taken advantage of it is potentially by trying to do an explore action inside of the mirror lake in order to maybe try to hunt something, because I believe one of the encounters or paths for the narrative there at the lake was to go hunting, but I don't want to get into any situation that's going to hurt my health currently as I try to build back up from what was an absolutely brutal first day in chapter 2. So we've gained our health back, and we also get to drop our terror down, but we don't have anything to worry about for terror, so we strictly did this just to get that extra boost in health. Now that we've rested by the lake, we're going to go ahead and we're going to begin our day by setting foot out into Avalon. So after resting at Mirror Lake, which was extremely handy that we found that location, as we were able to get double the rewards for doing the location action twice over 2 different rounds, because you can only limit it to once a day, we really need to start exploring to find more Menhirs. I really don't want to get into a situation where we have to light another Menhir down here at our home settlement, because that will just reveal all the locations, the majority of which we already explored. I'd rather kind of move out into new territory. So looking around the game board, we know what 106 and 103 will be because we've been out that way. We remember 4 Dweller Mounds was here, and there was some numerical keys over there that could have, gone further out. But you'll notice if I move to the Hunter's Grove, I can't reveal 106 because it's too far away from my lit Menhir. I'd have to actually activate a Menhir at the farmhold in order to be able to open this card up. Way too many actions, way too much time to spend. We don't have that much time. So the only thing that makes sense to do is to, now that we have Whiting revealed, to maybe try up here, because this is a location we haven't checked before. I believe we know what this one is, although it's escaping me as to what that one was. Oh no, that's right. There's nothing there that we've ever been able to go over and explore. We'd have to go here first, which we've never done, and then we can go down to 119. So yeah, we actually have the option to check out either one of these are good, but we might as well head to the first farmhold. It sounds like the most logical thing to do anyway. So we're trying to, just like it said in the event card, focus on finding other Menhirs. We do not want to have the weirdness or the darkness essentially closing in on us. So we're going to go ahead and spend, actually we'll spend 2 energy to make it all the way to Whiting, and we're gonna have to stop in Whiting because by moving into Whiting we have a settlement, so we're gonna have to pull ourselves a diplomacy event or a blue encounter, which usually involves a diplomacy event. So we can spend 2 energy right now, and that will get us from Mirror Lake to Tanglewood. And the fun part is we actually have to, we'll go the other way around so we don't have to draw a green encounter. We'll go from the Mirror Lake down to Hunter's Grove, so we don't have to deal with any pulling of encounters. And then we'll come over here to Whiting. Now we have to stop, pull the blue encounter, see what we get, and let's hope it's not too bad and holds us up. Thank goodness we got Calm Before the Storm, which says uncertainty and anticipation are almost palpable, but you are able to pass safely. So we don't have to do anything else. That was a blue encounter. Thank goodness for that. There are a number of those inside the deck, so sometimes you will get blue encounters that will be just like Calm Before the Storm where nothing happens, and then other times you get cards that are not so nice and you have to go through a situation which we've seen before, which can turn out pretty ugly. But in this case, we got lucky, so we can continue our journey towards first farmhold. All right, so we're going to go ahead now, and we're going to use 1 more point of energy, which is going to push us into exhaustion in order to push ourselves towards the first farmhold. And the first thing we do when we get into one of these places is we check all the numerical keys, and we actually flip over any locations that are within the Menhirs that are currently activated. So that will be only south of us and north of us, and not to the east, because that's 2 spaces away from our active Menhir. So let's go ahead and grab 115 and 119 and reveal what happens. To the north of us, we have what is called Titan's Steps. And as you can see, we may have just struck gold because there is a icon there for a Menhir, meaning that we can actually drop a Menhir there and continue traveling up that way. So this is a huge find for us because this is opposite side from the farmhold where I really didn't want to go back and activate. So that actually worked out perfect. But we still have this southern region to open up and find out what's there as well, so let's go check that out too. Just south of us from the first farmhold is the Derelict Fleet. So here we go. Interesting cards we're getting here. This one says scour the wreckage of the Derelict Fleet, And it says, many a ship carried eager men to Avalon. Now they all rest here. Interesting. Okay. Oh, that could be... That almost kind of sounds like one of the insignias that they were talking about earlier on in the gameplay. That's very interesting. Now, there's a dream that can happen there, but I can tell you right now, the Titan Steps is by far the most interesting location in terms of dropping a Menhir later on. So now we've revealed our 2 locations. The next thing we have to do is draw a purple encounter when we enter this location. So this is the first time we're going to see one of those. The Whispering Wisp. Interesting. Doesn't look too friendly. It says, they say if you listen close enough, you will hear the time and place of your death. Well, that doesn't sound good. The good news is that the value's not that high. The bad news is it only starts with courage and with magic. So it's not really many weaknesses going on with this monster. I really do like the vulnerabilities or weaknesses that start these sequences because they can be really thematic to the character that you're actually attacking. And I love that connection in combat because it actually just makes sense in my mind over time as I do this. That, again, courage would be the only thing you could actually overcome something like this with, or some type of magic. You couldn't use aggression on something like this, or practicality, for instance. It just wouldn't make any sense. You wouldn't even understand how to comprehend something like this if it was coming after you. Down below here it says, if your terror track is full, you lose and the encounter ends. Wow. So right off the hop, if you have too much terror, this shows up. It just scares you to, well, not to death, but if your terror track is full, you lose and you'll take an attack and everything else, and you don't, of course, get the benefits of the encounter. Down below, if we do win, we gain 1 XP and we gain a magic. So that's not bad, I guess. So we have a choice here. Of course, we can always flee, but you'll see fleeing at this particular course would give us some terror, which I'd rather not have. But, you know, we could flee if we didn't want to deal with it. But you know what? 1 magic and 1 XP is hard to give up when it's only 4. So I think let's go for it and see if our new combat cards we added in, our advanced ones, help us out. So here we go. We're heading into combat against the Whispering Wisp. We're going to be using our Battle Horn. So if we get any courage at the very end of our sequence, we'll be gaining an extra card drawn. Improvised Armor, we'll wear it, but it's completely and utterly useless in this fight because it only reduces wounds and we take terror damage from this thing. The Old Steel Smasher will certainly help us off the hop as it gives us 1 value to the value of our sequence. We have to have a sequence established to get that 1 value, but hey, it's always been a help in the past, so why not use it? So we're already getting to the 4 just from that. So we're going to start off here with 3 cards. We're going to be drawing 3 cards and hoping that they end up being half decent because we don't get any benefits of any extra bonus cards going into this fight just yet. And we're also kind of hoping that maybe if we get lucky, we'll see those attack cards that we put in our deck show up at some point. So we'll see how that pans out. First card we have here is Intimidate. We've seen this before, so this is Intimidate, gives you 1 value, and then if we're fighting a grain encounter, which we're not, we get bonuses. Not the greatest in this case. Ha! Look at that! We actually drew it! Attack improved, so there's 2 right off the hop, and it'll prep us, and the next turn around we get an extra card. So that's huge. And we have Defend. So those are the 3 cards that we've drawn. Let's go ahead and see if we can find a way to take down this Wisp. I don't think this Wisp knew what it had coming to it because right off the bat with our awesome attack improved card that we gained, we have now gone ahead and we've connected that on the courage, giving us 2 value. We'll also take a preparation token and place it here, although it's not going to matter because now we have 2 plus the 1 for the hammer. And we're going to also add on this one here, connecting again at courage for an extra 1 called Intimidate. And bam, we have hit the 4 we need. We don't even need to defend. We got an absolutely perfect draw on that. Plus, we got to even use the card that we enhanced our deck with. So right out of the gates, guys, there you go. Now, think, if that hadn't been the improved attack card, that card could have potentially ended our turn right there. So, huge benefit right out of the gate, and we don't even need the token. So, boom, the Whispering Wisp is no more. Let's find out what rewards we gain and gain them. Haha, the Whispering Wisp had no idea what it had coming to it, and we have easily defeated it, giving ourselves an XP as well as a magic, which is really going to help us out, because magic, as we know, is tough to get. And experience is always handy. So that card is gone and is now defeated, and we'll go to the bottom of the encounter deck, as does all defeated encounters and even guardians in this case when you're playing true solo now. But if you're playing cooperatively, guardians will stay on the board, as we talked about at the beginning of the video. So that resolves that encounter, and now we can find out what we want to do with our last point of energy for the day. So with one more energy left to spend before we end the day, we might as well stay here, seeing as we've already drawn a purple encounter at this location. We probably won't want to come back necessarily, although we might have to based on whether we want to go north or south or back and forth. But I want to let you know that what's north of us is called the Titan Steps, and you have to, when you move into it, immediately lose an energy, and then you go to the journal. But you have to have an energy to spend to move there in the first place, because you're expending energy to climb up the Titan Steps. So if you don't have the energy, you can't go there and do the location action. So I'm not going to move up north, and I could go south because there's no penalty there except just generic regular spending of energy, which I have one of. But I just don't want to go south yet because the location action has us paying lots of energy, gaining terror in order to get magic and experience, which sounds good, could be nice. It's free, but I don't have any of that. I don't have those resources to do that anyway. So I might as well stay here at the first farmhold and gain the advantage of potentially a dream because I don't have terror, which is higher than my health or anything like that. And we can go ahead and explore the first farmhold, find out more about it. So it says down here at the bottom, the first foothold of Avalon's conquerors, now ruined and abandoned, just like its Menhir. So let's go ahead and use our last point of energy to explore the first farmhold. When humans first landed on the Avalon, they only had a small strip of land ripped away from the weirdness by Arthur's druid Merlin. Besieged by horrors and ancient powers, they razed the round fort of Tainted and survived 3 long years within its walls, repelling assaults and devising ways to head deeper inland. After the conquest, only a small farmhold remained near the fort. Unfortunately, the local Menhir, being the oldest, was also the first to go dark. Now we're going to head into the journal to find out what we do next. So our options at the first farmhold include climbing the wall of the fort to go to verse number 1, inspect the dead Menhir, go to verse number 2, comb through the remains of the farmhold, go to verse number 5, visit a nearby watermill, go to verse number 9, or we can leave and the exploration ends. Well, we don't want to leave. I want to find out something here. So we've got 4 options. Let's go ahead and pick one. I'm actually really intrigued by the Menhir, which is actually shown right there on the back of the card, laying right there in a pile of what looks to be rubble and grass and whatnot. So I kind of want to read a little bit more about that. It says that one is inspecting the dead Menhir. So let's read that one in verse number 2. The statue rests some distance from the stone ring of the fort, lying on its back at a crooked angle. They say it was the very first Menhir that was raised on the island. Ooh, if that's true, it's remarkable how little they have changed since then. This one looks exactly like the one in your farmhold, only older, more weathered and cracked. It did, however, undergo some recent repairs. Several parts were reshaped or replaced with newer ones. Stone chips and footprints reveal someone was working here for many days. If they know how to fix the Menhirs, maybe they can help in the farmhold. New task. Find who repaired or tried to repair this Menhir. Exploration ends. So essentially, we've been given a new task that we're trying to figure out who has actually been trying to restore these Menhirs. They could be of serious use to us. And with that, our day has come to an end. As we've run out of energy to spend, we're going to move into the end of the day. So let's head to the character board, eat some food, rest, and maybe spend some XP if we'd like. So as we do every single day, we'll eat 1 piece of food, which is going to help us by restoring 1 of our health. So boom, our health is going to jump from 4 to 5, getting stronger every single day, which is just awesome. We're also going to lose any fear or terror that we have, and we're still currently at 0, so nothing gained there. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to restore all of our energy if we're not exhausted, but we were exhausted, so we're going to restore up to 4 if we are. Now here's where we get a really cool benefit for the first time, because our actual T marker for our health is higher than our health. Last time we couldn't take advantage of this, but remember, we have inexhaustible stamina. Now the last round, like I said, we couldn't take advantage of this because the cap was stopping us from gaining that extra 1 because we hit our limit, I believe, at 4. So in this particular case, we now can gain that 1 because we have that ability in that space. There's no longer a cap. So we're actually starting the day at 5, which is another reason why I pushed further, knowing that we'd be more healthy. However, I didn't know that the purple encounter wouldn't be as nasty because I believe it was 4, if I remember correctly, and that's quite low. So I was actually expecting something a lot more vicious, because I've gone through that encounter deck prior to doing this playthrough to take a look at some of them, and some of them are just as vicious as the gray or the blue or the green can be. So we've gone ahead and we essentially got really lucky there by getting one of the lower ones, but at the same time, getting terror in the situation we had could have been really nasty. Plus we got lucky because we pulled one of the cards that I actually upgraded, which worked out amazing. Okay, so we're going to go ahead now and move on to spending our XP, and I'm choosing not to. I want to kind of build up and go for an attribute next. I think we already spent enough XP in cards, so we're going to go back to focusing on attributes, so I'll hold on to my 1 XP. And now we're going to read a dream, because we ended our day at the first farmhold, and there is an icon for an eye there, which signifies we read in a dream entry from the journal. So let's do that now to end our day. A tiresome dream of endless siege, constant attacks, and hope. Even in the direst situation, the first men on the island had plenty of it. Hint, there's always a way to gather enough resources to light up the next Menhir. When you get stuck, just explore around. So that's just a hint to let you know that even if it looks tough or you're low on resources, continue exploring and you may gain access to the resources you need. Don't give up. And that's going to do it, guys. That is the end of part number 1. We went through all the corrections and rule changes at the very beginning. We also talked a little bit about the giveaway. We got a fully resolved around the Menhir, all the locations that we can potentially look into. We have a new Menhir location that we can potentially ignite at some point later on at the Titan Steps, which we have yet to explore. We found the derelict fleet down here. We took out a wisp. We took down some puffins. We went through a whole bunch of near-death experiences at the end of the first day, and we somehow still continue on. And I can tell you right now, this playthrough could have gone very differently if I had have messed up on that very first attack with the puffins. So we got super lucky there with the card draw, and everything panned out perfectly in order to keep us just barely alive enough to continue on, because it would have been a sad start to this chapter 2 if I had died. But first off, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. These videos are not short. There's quite a bit going on in them, so you're seeing the gameplay as it's played, so you're truly getting a really good representation of how the game plays. Hopefully this is helping you make an informed decision on the Kickstarter, which is by far at this point, from what I've seen, a resounding success based on the number of backers, and the money that it's brought in is actually incredible. And honestly, it looks like it's on track to be one of the highest grossing Kickstarters in terms of board games that we've seen so far. So that's insane, absolutely mind-boggling, and really cool to actually be a part of that and be able to help you guys in your decision for or against this one. So thank you guys so much for watching as always, and keep on rolling solo.